Welcome back to the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel. My name is Matthew, and thank you for being here for another episode of Beyond the Lines. It's the show where we get an opposition supporter's view when it comes to previewing Newcastle's next game. And this Sunday at 2 o'clock, it is back, ladies and gentlemen. Euros fever has officially left us, and it's going to be replaced with the torturous delights that a new season in the Premier League brings. And to help me preview Newcastle's kickoff game against West Ham, I'm joined by a huge West Ham United supporter. He is the co-creator of the We Are West Ham podcast. It's the beautiful, it's the brilliant, it's James Jones. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on this week.
No, happy to have you. In that intro there, it was so hard not to say James L. Jones. Do you know who James L. Jones is?
No.
He was the voice of Darth Vader and Mufasa in The Lion King. So
Was anyway, really?
Yeah. We'll digress.
That.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Might start calling you L. You know, this might be the start of a. Yeah, anyway, I digress. Anyway, thanks for coming on. We're going to be talking about the game on Sunday, which it's the start of a new season, and we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about West Ham. Last season, very, very good season by all standards, really. You were in the Champions League chase. You've qualified for Europe. How did you feel about last season, and how do you feel coming into this one off the back of it?
It's still a little bit of a. I think a lot of our fans are still in a little bit of shock. We're still forgetting that we're playing Europa League football this year because it did come out of the blue. After being turned over by Newcastle on the opening day of the season, we were all fearing the worst and thinking, here we go again. And it then just completely changed, and David Moyes got something right, and it ended up, we ended up being in the Champions League race. We had to settle for sixth, but at the beginning of the season, a lot of fans were just tipping another relegation battle. So yeah, absolutely buzzing. And looking back now, it's just a shame that we weren't there to see it, because the fans have been craving that. That was the sort of season that we were promised when we were moved into the new stadium 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, that was the sort of season the owners are going, we're going to fight for Europe. Once we get into this new stadium, we're going to be in Europe, in the Champions League, in Europa League, and we're going to be fighting at the right end of the table. And all we'd got was relegation battles. So it was just a shame that we couldn't be there. But the expectation going into this season before the summer started, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, was, okay, let's build on it. But given what hasn't happened so far this summer, I think fans are getting a little bit apprehensive now. Yeah,
we will move on to that because, my next point was transfers. But, where you find yourself, what are your thoughts about maybe going into this Europa League campaign? I appreciate sometimes, and this sort of, adds to the transfer worries, that it can be sort of a curse and a blessing, because you're in the Europe, you're playing some top sides, but obviously you need the squad additions to cope with that.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, it's good that we're straight into the group stages rather than having to do the qualifiers, because that proved to be our downfall. 2 years running, we're losing to Astra in the qualifiers. But going to the group stage is great, but you're right. Like we had to build on squad depth a couple of times last season when we lost Declan Rice for 6 games towards the end of the season. Antonio never stays fit for a whole year. We needed at least a central midfielder and a striker this summer. And instead, so far, we brought in a backup goalkeeper who arguably is good enough to be our number one. And we don't even need a number one because we've got Fabianski. Yeah. So the next 2 or 3 weeks, West Ham fans are getting a little bit anxious about whether the club are going to bring in, 1, players at all, and 2, whether they're going to be the right players to improve the squad depth for a start and potentially improve the starting 11. Because at the moment, squad depth is so thin that going into a season where you're competing in 4 competitions, a Europa League competition which requires you to play Thursday to Sunday, it's going to be tough having to rely on the squad that did so well last year, but have got at least an extra 6 games this year to contend with. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one, but you've got two weeks to get it right.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Mikel Antonio there. Different and similar players, like you've just said, how important his goals were last season. He came into his own, scoring a lot of goals in the last couple of seasons, especially. But you mentioned his injuries there. I sort of put him in the same sort of bracket, not quality-wise maybe, but as Callum Wilson for us. He's so important. His goals are so important, but you sit there and you think, when he's there, he's great. He's one of our best players, if not our best player, but you can't rely on him. And that is frustrating, isn't it?
It's been like that for about 2 or 3 seasons where we had Sebastian Haller, but it wasn't really working for him, and you can't go into every season having to rely on a player that isn't going to stay fit for, you'd be lucky to get a run of sort of 10 games out of him before he's out for a game or two. We are quite well. I'd say I don't know whether we're lucky in this respect, but he does recover from injuries quite quickly. He'll get a hamstring injury and he'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks, but that's no real consolation if you've got no one to step in and who's good enough to step in and cover for him adequately for the time that he's out. We have got the likes of Jared Bowen, Yarmolenko that can potentially play in that position if we need them, but then that leaves you short on the right, and then we're in trouble again. So it's frustrating that we're having to rely on Antonio, who on his day is so good, so good in front of goal. But if you're relying on him to stay fit for 38 games, then you've got a problem, and that's the problem we've got at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Miguel Antonio, fantastic player, like we say, when he's fit. One other player you've mentioned then, I'd be silly not to mention him after the summer we've had, is Declan Rice. Now, he's such an important player. You said that spell at the end of last season really sort of handicapped you a little bit not having him in the squad. But really what I want to ask, James, is what was it like having a player, one of your own, be part of such a, I guess we could say, iconic team now, because they're the most successful England side we've seen. So what was that like? I
think on the whole, we were really proud to see one of our own in the midfield, and actually showing people that actually he's not an overrated midfielder, which a lot of people were saying, we don't really know what Declan Rice does. Why is he being linked to Chelsea for 100 million quid? He's not an £100 million player, and I think he opened a lot of neutral fans' eyes throughout the summer, and he did it on the Europe stage, and the only thing is that a lot of West Ham fans were watching him every week be on the sofa going, "Don't play too well, Dec, because you're going to getting sold." But we're all just so proud of him and so delighted that he had the summer that he did, and arguably before he got pulled off in the final, arguably man of the match in the final, I think, before he got hauled off in that second half. So we're proud of him, and at the moment we're quite glad that he's going to remain a West Ham player for at least another 6 months, hopefully a year. Yeah, well, that was going to say, can you see him staying for those foreseeable? Because surely if he keeps his form up, it's only a matter of time in this day and age. Yeah, I think the worry was that after the summer that he'd had with England, that we probably wouldn't have him back. But it looks like he's going to get another year. We're going to get another year out of him. He might sign a new deal just to sort of protect the club in terms of his transfer value ahead of next summer. And if we get another year out of him, I don't think the fans will begrudge him and move back to Chelsea. He was at Chelsea at 13, 14 before they released him. He's a Chelsea fan. So if it is Chelsea that he goes to after giving us another year, then I don't think the fans will begrudge him that. I think they quite respect the fact that he wants to go back there, and especially if we're not in Europe next or the season after next. If we're not in the Champions League or the Europa League, which is very unlikely anyway, then he deserves to be playing at the very top and for the very best teams. So one more year, and then I think we'll all go, "Thanks very much, mate. Good luck, and wherever you go next." Yeah, and hopefully you'll get the money to replace him as well, and obviously if the owners choose to. So before we get on to the game, one last thing, I always sometimes ask, past fixtures. Do you have any memories of games at St James's Park? I appreciate that recently our record against you has been pretty good, but do you have any good memories or particular ones that have stuck in your craw a little bit? Well, I did a little bit of research beforehand because there's a few that stand out, but I just had to refresh my memory. And the one that always stands out was actually the last time we played each other at St James's Park on the first game of the season. And that was Newcastle won that 4-0, and we got relegated that year. So that was in 2002, 2003. So I'm hoping that if we avoid a 4-0 defeat, I'll be quite happy this weekend based on that. Another one as well, January 2011, Leon Best hat-trick and a 5-0 Newcastle win. Wow. I mean, the majority of the ones that I do remember at St James's Park are Newcastle wins. Because our record at St James's Park hasn't been great. But November 2012, we nicked a 1-0 win, and Kevin Nolan inevitably got the winner for us. Didn't celebrate either, did he? He didn't celebrate. He went to do the chicken dance, didn't he? And then stopped, which is fair enough. But But yeah, and then last season frustrated me a little bit because we did so well to fight back from 2-0 down, and then Joe Willock comes off the bench like he'd done in the 10
7
weeks
times.
previously or whatever it was, and got the winner. But yeah, we haven't got so many happy memories at St James's Park, to be fair, but I'm hoping for something a little bit different this weekend.
I do remember, just to sort of give you some sort of respite from looking back on bad memories, I do remember the one under Rafa, I think it was 3-0. I think Felipe Anderson's might have scored, and Chicharito as well. But I mean, I could go on forever. But I mean, honourable mention, I remember a Mark Viduka brace. That was fun because he only scored about 6 goals for us. And I remember Andy Carroll scoring against us in a draw with cornrows in his hair, which was funny. But the less said about that, the best. But yeah, Leon Best's hat-trick, that was brilliant. That around about winter time, about New Year, I think it was.
January,
yeah, I remember thinking, what's he going to do up front alongside Peter Lovenkrands? And what was it, 5-0?
Yeah, 5-0.
Leon Best. Well, you never know. You might put pay to those on Sunday, but fingers crossed you don't. So the game, what would you? I mean, you've been watching them pre-season. They've had a pretty good pre-season. They haven't been beaten in pre-season, I don't think. You've got a bit of silverware against Atlanta. You got a 6-2 against Celtic. What do you think, from what you've seen, is going to be the lineup for West Ham?
Well, given that we've not made any outfield signings, it's going to be much of what we saw last year. We did bring Areola in goal, but it's going to be probably it'll be Fabianski in goal. A back four of Creswell, Dawson, Ogbonna and Soufal. Your midfield pairing of Rice and Souček, and then Antonio up top with Fornals, Benrahma and Bowen in behind him. Bowen and Fornals sort of playing on the right and the left. And I think Benrahma's going to take up that Lingard role because obviously we lost Lingard. He doesn't look like he's coming back from his...
That's a big miss, isn't it?
Year. Massive. Yeah, I mean, there was real hope that we'd get him back. And there was rumours that he wanted to come back, but United have put 30 million quid price tag on his head. And with 1 year left on his contract, he's not worth 30 million quid.
Yeah.
But it looks like, Benrahma's had a fantastic summer playing in that role. Mm-hmm. He didn't get a lot of minutes last year. He had to settle for a lot of time off the bench. So I think he's the one that us West Ham fans are looking at to kind of be the Lingard that we're going to be missing this year, and be the creative outlet in behind Antonio and make things tick.
I did see a lot of him at it was Brentford, wasn't it? And when he played alongside Ollie Watkins, and he did look a great player. And I guess, like you said, I haven't seen loads of him in West Hampshire because he hasn't really had the minutes. But you never know, he could, like you said, create that. Replace that Lingard berth. But what we'll do before we go to predictions, James, I want to do a bit of, for a first. This is the first I've ever done this on this show. Word association. I'm going to just throw a word at you. You have to say a player's name, a current player's name, obviously,
okay.
And who comes to mind. So we'll go first. Passion.
Declan Rice.
Pace.
Bowen.
Liability.
Issa Diop.
Tricky.
Benrahma.
Essential.
Souček.
And finally, shite.
Wow.
They're not watching you, James. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be unfair to call any of them shite after last season, but
yeah.
Do you know what? He had a good summer with Ukraine, but Yarmolenko.
Oh, well, I mean, I appreciate it. That's why I threw that in there, because obviously I'm hoping to just sort of poke fun at some of the better sides and having to say. I mean, Yarmolenko, like you say, on his day is dangerous. So
yeah,
we love you really, Yarmolenko. Well, I don't. James does. So before you go, predictions. What give us a score? What do you think?
Well, we have a habit of starting seasons really poorly and losing our opening game. So if we avoid defeat, I'll be pretty pleased. I'm going to go for 2-2.
2-2. I think I would probably take 2-2, to be honest. But given, like you said, the record against you guys and Callum Wilson's record against you, which we haven't really mentioned as well, I'd like to think we could squeeze a win. But, it's a funny one. We need to remember who we're playing. Like you said, last season when we played you at our place, sort of the red card settled nerves a little bit, but then you still came back into it and, in the end, thankfully, we got the win. But nothing's for sure. Even when you're 2-0 up with 10 men with Newcastle United. So I'll go 1-0. I'll try to be optimistic, which I very rarely am. So I'll probably end up with egg on my face by Sunday afternoon. But I just want to thank you, James. Thank you very much for coming on. All the best for the season and those European trips.
Thanks for having me, and I really hope you guys eventually get the owner that you deserve, because we're in the same position that
likewise, mate.
You guys are in. So we hope that you get the right owner and start seeing some better days up there.
Very much appreciate that. Me too, mate. And same to you. I know we could have probably talked about our owners for another half an hour, but it'd all just be too many expletives and all that stuff. So we'll leave it there. But all the best for the season. Cheers. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone, for watching. If you haven't already, please like the video. Please share the video. And if you haven't, subscribe to the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel.